Good afternoon. I'm Lisa De La Garza, Vice President of Programs with Texas Women's Foundation, and I want to thank you for joining us for this installment of Virtual Viewpoints, a complimentary series of events to engage with like-minded people and to learn about the unique issues facing women, girls, and their families that is based on our groundbreaking research. Today, we will be talking about a study conducted by Asset Funders Network in partnership with Texas Women's Foundation, Why Care About Care, that elevates the intersectional and intergenerational issues associated with the care economy and the challenges facing low-income women of color who make up the care workforce. This primer is designed to provide funders with responsive strategies and policy solutions which center low-income women of color and ultimately build a healthy and resilient economy for us all. We will have a discussion with experts who will talk specifically about the economic impacts of care, particularly care for the elderly and people with disabilities, and how understanding care as a shared responsibility will set the stage for a stronger economy. But first, we'd like to share a short video to show you why it's important that we care about care.
It's time to care about care, like the entire economy depends on it. Because it does. In the U.S. today, 33.6 million families have children under age 18. Fewer than 1 in 3 children have a full-time stay-at-home parent. There are 61 million adults with disabilities, injury, or illness that need care. Experts estimate that about 10,000 baby boomers turn 65 each day and will eventually require long-term care. The care economy is intersectional and intergenerational, with ripple effects that stretch well beyond the care itself because it both creates jobs and makes all other work possible. Just like investments in other infrastructure projects like roads, bridges, and schools, investments in the care economy are investments in infrastructure that ensure everyone, children, families, employers, and communities, can thrive. But the care economy is misunderstood, underfunded, and undervalued. Take jobs. Over 5 million Americans, mostly women of color and immigrant women, are employed in the care economy. The median pay is far below a living wage, so 40% of care economy workers must rely on public benefits to make ends meet. These caregiving jobs are also some of the least protected, often falling outside of our nation's labor laws. Those paid caregivers work alongside the over 53 million Americans who provide unpaid care to their loved ones. According to the AARP, the direct, unpaid value of this work is $470 billion. Go deeper, and you see how far the economic impacts of undervaluing care reach. Family caregivers lose $300,000 in individual income over their lifetimes, and working women lose more than $20 billion each year due to care responsibilities. And year-to-year shortfalls in income widen into massive wealth gaps over a lifetime. Undervaluing caregiving contributes to the racial and gender wealth gap. By the time they reach retirement age, non-white households have an average savings of $30,000, compared with $120,000 for white households. And female caregivers over 50 have 58% less retirement wealth than those who did not provide care. All of this is a drag on the economy overall, and it makes us less economically resilient to things like the next pandemic. But imagine a publicly funded system that recognizes care as both an individual and social responsibility, values care workers, and supports family members and friends to care for each other. This is a healthy care economy. It would have paid family and medical leave, access to affordable, quality childcare, long-term services and support, and better wages and benefits for care workers who provide the services we all need. Now is the time to invest in America's care infrastructure that will not only overturn generations of systemic sexism and racism, but will build a healthy and resilient economy for us all. This is both a massive challenge and exciting opportunity for philanthropy to rise up and meet.
would now like to introduce you to one of our panelists today, Julie Cashion. Julie is a brief author and consultant. She worked with Asset Funders Network and the Economic Opportunity Fund as a consultant in authoring this primer. She is also the Director for Women's Economic Justice and a Senior Fellow at the Century Foundation with expertise in care, work and family, economic mobility, and labor issues. Julie also serves as a policy advisor to the National Domestic Workers Alliance. She holds a master's in public policy from Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government and a bachelor's with highest honors in political science from the University of Michigan. She's an avid fiction reader, a Brooklynite, and the mom of a 7-year-old. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. And okay, great. So my slides are coming up. I didn't want to share my actual background, so I'm sitting in Amy Poehler's office or Leslie Knope's office from Parks and Recreation. So just so you have context for I'm not actually in an office with flags, but I wish I was. Let me start by sharing my own care story. So in April of 2020, 2 weeks into remote kindergarten, my husband and I were not quite sure how we were going to continue to work our full-time jobs and care for our then 6-year-old. But I am a problem solver and I came up with a solution. My mom was living alone while my stepfather was recovering from a bad accident in a rehab kind of nursing home facility. So I thought we'd move in with her. She's a retired elementary school teacher. She would have company. We would have help. It was kind of a win for all solution. The day I was about to ask her, she told me my stepfather was coming home because they were afraid to keep him in the nursing home because of COVID. She and a home health care worker would take care of him. So my husband and I continued to muddle through with school and childcare. My mom began to muddle through caring for her partner, and fears of COVID meant none of us could help each other. Variations of the story happen every single day, and we know we are some of the lucky ones. At some point, every single one of us is going to need care or to provide care. Infants become school-aged children who care for younger siblings, and teenagers who care for grandparents, young adults who care for their own children, and as middle-aged adults care for their parents. It's a cycle that goes on every day. And the 53 million unpaid family caregivers work alongside the nearly 5.7 million people who call caregiving their profession. Together, it's the heart of the care economy. Next slide, please. So, we should care about care because it impacts all of us and because it's bigger than each of us. Care impacts economic recovery and prosperity. In fact, a study by the Time's Up Foundation found that putting $77.5 billion a year into care leads to 2 million new jobs, or 22.5 million new jobs over 10 years. And that only includes the immediate care jobs and the retail and restaurant jobs that support those workers. It doesn't include the parents whose work will be supported by childcare, or the other family caregivers who would be supported by having other forms of care. And this is also key to family economic security and the ability to build wealth. And of course, the well-being of children, older adults, and people with disabilities. And we cannot talk about care without talking about how it's impacted by and impacts equity and justice, especially when it comes to race and gender. The US has never built a comprehensive care infrastructure. For too long, we've left families shouldering the burden of caregiving and working, taking double and triple shifts, without common sense protections like universal paid leave, high quality affordable childcare, home and community-based services. As sociologist Jessica Calerco put it, other countries have safety nets, the US has women. The result is the care crisis. Even before the pandemic, the price of childcare was over $20,000 per child per year in some communities. For low-income families, childcare expenses for children under 5 eat up 35% of their income. American businesses lose an estimated $12.7 billion each year because of these childcare challenges. When people are disrupted and they're not able to work, they're not able to be productive, they have to leave their jobs and someone needs to be replaced. That's a big deal for employers who realized it even more during the pandemic. Caregivers who care for adult family members lose $300,000 over a lifetime in lost wages and Social Security benefits. And it's not just a temporary phase that affects women at one point in their lives, it follows them throughout working life and into retirement, with ripple effects across generations. Workers and their families lose an estimated combined $22.5 billion in wages every year because of the lack of paid family and medical leave. And that's, thinking about paid time to care for a newborn, a newly adopted child, manage a serious illness, care for a seriously ill loved one, or address caregiving needs around a military deployment. The lack of having a paid leave program for that makes everyone suffer. It's not just an economic issue. And finally, nearly 1 in 5 home care and direct care workers live in poverty, and 1 in 7 childcare workers live in poverty. So these are jobs that we do not value the way they should be valued. Next slide, please. The pandemic exacerbated the crisis and really just made it much more visible to everyone. People who unexpectedly needed to look after their children or other family members quickly discovered that the American workplace doesn't value caregiving. Millions of American families suddenly faced financial setbacks because of job loss, or were scrambling to cover the need to raise their children, to be with their children while schools were closed. And today we're seeing the results. 1.5 million fewer mothers are in the workforce than before the pandemic. For Black, Latinx, and Indigenous women, they're more likely to have lost their job, be on the front lines as essential workers, and have to solve their care challenges on their own. And nearly 1/3 of coronavirus deaths in the United States have been linked to nursing homes. Next slide, please. Another major challenge is our culture. Our cultural norms accept that caregiving is a personal responsibility, that it's on the backs of women of color. And here's a way in which we see how little has changed. In the 1970s, Congress passed a bipartisan bill that would have been comprehensive child care. It would have made a huge difference and been a game changer for families. Instead, then President Nixon vetoed it. He talked about how the vast moral authority of the national government to the side of communal approaches to child rearing over and against the family-centered approach, and said the childcare legislation had family weakening implications. Now, of course, we know that it's a partnership. When a parent sends their kid to childcare, that parent is very engaged in raising their child, and the childcare early educators and staff are also. It's something we all do together. It is communal, and that's a good thing. It doesn't mean that families aren't involved. Meanwhile, when childcare money came to the states earlier this year, or I guess last year, Representative Charlie Shepard in Idaho said, "I don't think anybody does a better job than mothers in the home. And any bill that makes it easier or more convenient for mothers to come out of the home and let others raise their child, I don't think that's a good direction for us to be going." So once again, we see these cultural norms where moms should be home. And of course, we know we've taken these to heart. This is why mom guilt is a thing. This is why we have, so much pressure on us as caregivers, because society tells us we should, and we think we should, and our policies don't do anything to alleviate it. And as we look at our history, we can see the ways racism and sexism are completely interwoven into it. The undervaluation of caregiving is rooted in the system of brutal racial and ethnic discrimination that provided the foundation for the United States chattel slavery. Black women served as domestic workers, forced to nurse and care for the children of white landowners and the landowners themselves. And once slavery formally ended, the system evolved to limit Black and immigrant women to working as caregivers and domestic workers and pay them as little as possible to do so while denying them basic workplace protections. While our labor laws have changed some, the undervaluation, undercompensation, and underprotection of professionals who are working in caregiving persists today. CAP Senior Fellow Jocelyn Fry explains it this way: because of the combined effects of entrenched racial, gender, and ethnic biases, women of color historically have not been seen as equal to white women or men, and little consideration has been given to their personal needs and challenges. Next slide, please. Thus, white women and wealthier women are more likely to leave the labor force when they need to care, while women of color and low-paid women are more likely to make changes to their work schedules and rely on other childcare solutions like families and friends, as they have long done. The majority of caregivers, family and professional, are women, disproportionately Black, Latinx, Asian, and immigrant. And when caregivers reach retirement age, as you saw in the video, non-white households average $30,000 in savings, while white households average $120,000. So this really adds up over time. Next slide, please. This has major implications across race and gender and across generations. It impacts the 33.6 million families who have children under age 18. We know that 10,000 baby boomers are turning 65 each day, and many of them will require long-term care. 61 million adults with disabilities, injury, or illness currently need care. There are 5.7 million care workers and 53 million family caregivers, as we talked about. And 25% of those are like me in the sandwich generation, caring for their children and also their parents. That's why it is long past time to build the healthy care economy America needs. Next slide, please. We need a publicly funded system that recognizes care as both an individual and social responsibility, values and better compensates care workers, supports family members to both care and provide financially for each other, and includes child care, paid leave, and long-term services and supports. Next slide, please. This is why we are in an unprecedented moment. We have a White House committed to care issues. President Biden is talking about it. Vice President Harris is talking about it. We have a stepmother in the White House for the very first time as vice president. And we also have great legislative proposals in Congress, lots of members of Congress who are champions on these issues. We have coordinated advocacy coalitions and campaigns, greater public awareness because of COVID-19, and unprecedented media attention. We really have a moment of opportunity now. Next slide, please. We also had the American Rescue Plan, which included funding to stabilize the childcare sector and support families who need care. It also put in money for the child tax credit, which is giving families immediate access to cash supports that they need to raise their children. The American Rescue Plan also included money for home and community-based services to support families who wanted to bring their family members home from nursing homes, or sometimes those who are long haulers from COVID who, have been impacted by COVID and now have illness or injury as a result. And then the American Jobs and Families Plans, together, the president's plans provide $450 billion for childcare and early learning, $225 billion for paid family and medical leave, and $400 billion for home and community-based services. So that is exciting, and we are in a position to be fighting for that money right now. Right now, Congress is about to move forward on a bipartisan infrastructure plan that includes none of this. We absolutely need roads and bridges, and we need to make sure that, our utilities are safe and stable, for sure. I don't have to tell you that in Texas, of course. However, we also need to invest in our care infrastructure and our care economy. And we need to make sure that members of Congress and the administration hear that from people all over the country. Next slide, please. From the perspective of philanthropy, there's a lot of opportunities right now supporting policy advocacy through national care collaborations, supporting state and local initiatives, research, culture change strategies, communication strategies, policy implementation and direct services. We need to make sure that the money from childcare that went through the American Rescue Plan is used well and effectively, and that families see the results of that, as well as grassroots organizing. The pandemic highlighted just how inadequate U.S. cultural norms and public policies are when it comes to our collective responses to care. But now is the time to build a robust care infrastructure, and I hope you will join me in that effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Julie. And I hope everybody is taking notes. Please use the Q&A section, and we're going to be coming back around at the end of our conversation for some questions from you all. I mean, I cannot believe that Congress just acted literally in the last hour and a half. Didn't take final action, but it does look like you said that we do have an infrastructure agreement that at this point in time does not include any work around childcare or elder care. So this is perfect timing for us all to come together around this issue. So now I'd like to go ahead and introduce our second discussant today, who is Melissa Orth. And Melissa and Julie and I are all going to have a conversation, and then we're going to bring you all into it with us. So first of all, I guess me, right? I'm Dina Jackson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at the Texas Women's Foundation. And in addition, to be clear, I am the co-chair of the Asset Funders Network, who published this brief. And I am Chief Decision Helper, Grocery Store Runner, and doctor office chauffeur for my dad, Bill Jackson. So those are my three roles right now. But Melissa, thank you for being here with us today. Melissa is the president and CEO of the Legacy Senior Communities, which is a Jewish faith-based continuum of care community here in Dallas and Plano, Texas. She was previously the COO and CFO of the Green Hills School, which is a co-educational independent school serving 1,300 students pre-K all the way up through 12th grade. She earned her BBA from Kansas State, and she is a certified public accountant. Now, in addition to serving on the board of directors at the Texas Women's Foundation, Melissa is also on the board of Leading Age Texas, which is a member association providing professional development and advocacy services to not-for-profit senior service organizations. So happy to have you today, Melissa.
Thank you, Dina. Happy to be here.
So looking at your career, and I know you've had a chance to look over the brief and all, but your career kind of encompasses the pre-K to elder care, which is nearly the entire range of the care economy we're talking about today. What were some areas that might have carried over from your role as COO at an independent school dealing with younger children to your job now caring for elders in a comprehensive care facility?
Well, it's a great question, and one I am asked often. It was interesting when I decided to look for the next step in my career. I knew I wanted to be in a mission-based nonprofit organization, but also was open to considering other industries. And quite frankly, I didn't really know what all the senior services industry encompassed. You know, I thought of kind of the old traditional nursing home. And even though that level of care is still very important, it is such a small percentage of what senior services do today. So as you mentioned, we have two campuses that are called continuing care retirement communities. So we have independent living, assisted living, memory support, and healthcare centers. In those healthcare centers, we have people that are just in for 2 to 3 weeks, receiving short-term rehab or needing some skilled nursing that's temporary. And then we have those that, when you think of the traditional nursing home, that need round-the-clock skilled care, likely for the rest of their lives. And so they become residents of our healthcare center. We also have a home and community-based services company. So we have personal assistance services, which is essentially, Dina, what you were describing for your dad. We do that for some seniors who don't have family members who are able to do that for them. We also have skilled home health for people that need rehab or other skilled and are bound to their home and cannot leave to receive it. And then we have hospice services. So we have, you know, the full continuum under a faith-based nonprofit. And, you know, the similarities are that we are very people-centered, both in the types of people that are attracted to our business or people that enjoy taking care of others, providing services to others. There's a real focus on social and emotional health and growth and physical wellness. There is a focus on community. There's something very special about working at a place where you are side by side with the people that you are serving. And that's true on a school campus, and that's true in a retirement community. We both have very challenging financial models. It's because it's so people driven as far as our cost is, you know, 3/4 of that is what we pay our people in benefits and salaries. It costs a lot. It costs a lot to deliver high quality education, and it costs a lot to deliver high quality care and service in a senior environment. And so therefore affordability becomes a real challenge. And so in both industries, there was a real focus on raising money for financial assistance so that there could be socioeconomic diversity along other kinds of diversity. And that in the senior environment, for the people that really need the care, can afford to receive the care or can find a way to receive the care when that care is needed. Because in addition to the 10,000 people that are turning 65 each day, that Julie mentioned, the other statistic that's really staggering is that only 10% of the seniors are expected to have enough money to be able to afford the care they need. And whether that's in a community like ours or whether that's in their home. So that's the real crisis that it feels like that the country is undergoing, is how do we make sure that we can care for these seniors? Because you know, the demographics there. So for people in senior services, we're happy that the demand is going to be there, but it's really scary about how that's all going to be funded. And really the excellence in care is who you hire and adequate levels of staffing, and all of that come with money. A lot of what we offer is private pay, so independent living, assisted living, memory support. Memory support can be $100,000 a year, and it is not covered by insurance. It's all private pay. For people who are lucky enough to secure some long-term care insurance, that might offset some of those, but those programs are long gone. And right now, most people say, save the premium, just put money away and save. So that's a challenge. In our healthcare center, Medicare and insurance funds those short-term rehab and skilled, and those rates are dropping in Texas. Medicaid and Medicare, they're dropping at a time where our labor and all of our costs are going up. So we are barely a break-even business. And so that's a real challenge. So when we talk about paying people more, we would love to do that. The issue is, how do we make that happen? Because, you know, the revenue and expenses don't align. There's also a huge focus on institutional risk management, you know, there was a big focus on how to keep students safe and secure. And obviously that's a real focus for us in senior living, as well as the, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice issues. And areas of focus exist on both campuses or both industries in different ways, but still critically important. With regards to what's different, the senior living is very highly regulatory driven. We have, I've been told that we're second to only the nuclear and airline industry with regards to the level of regulation. And that makes it really challenging to operate, and also makes sometimes the funding model challenging. You know, the demographic in far as who we serve, the demographics for students are going down. As we just talked about, the demographics are going through the roof for seniors. And also the employee demographic. You know, in a school, you have primarily professional workers. And so even though I think everybody would probably get on board to say that we would love to be able to pay teachers more, in our industry, the majority of our essential workers are hourly workers, and those that we're concerned with regards to earning a full living wage. We have many of our people that work 2 full-time jobs, and that became very evident during the pandemic when we had to say, just for safety and security of everyone, that you need to only work for us and not work for another community. The number of people that basically had to cut their income in half was staggering. But then what was also humbling is we did not have an issue with people staying at home, not showing up to work. They had to be on the front lines. They had to, find childcare because they couldn't bring their children with them to work. They couldn't work from home. And we expected, because so many were women, about 85% almost of our total essential workers are women, which ties in with Julie's research. We really expected that as the pandemic hit, we would get a real impact from that. And we were trying to brainstorm about what we could do. And I don't think anybody missed work because of childcare, which just shows the dedication that they had, and hopefully that also probably shows that oftentimes there are multiple generations in the family, that there were other people maybe working from home that were able to help them with that. But we were thankful for that. And then I guess just lastly is senior living is a much less known industry than education. So where you have people growing up and wanting to be a teacher or wanting to work in a school environment, what we have challenges with is most people don't come out of college or come out of high school and say, I really want to work in senior living. And some of it is that misconception about what really senior living means, because once people are here, I find that they're extremely passionate about the work. Almost every person I talk to that says, why legacy, why senior living, they had a personal story about their own relative who is in senior living, or that either worked in senior living or lived in an environment. And that's what motivated them. And that's what makes them very passionate and dedicated employees and a wonderful place to work. But we can't rely on those stories anymore. We need to get the word out so that people know that this is an industry that's growing and there's a great amount of opportunity and it's a great quality of professional life to work in senior living.
Well, I'd mentioned my father is in assisted living, and there are some things going on right now at his location where it would be good for me to move him to a different floor. But when I broached this discussion with him, the first thing he said was, well, no, I like my staff. He's like, I can't, he says, I like the people that are here with me. I can't leave the people that care for me. So I'm like, well, okay, then we'll stay where we are. But that was the very first thing. And I can certainly tell you over the past year, when I could not see my dad, except for waving at him from his 6th floor window, knowing that those mostly women, but a few men were there, certainly made my life better. And I did deliver a fair number of Tiff's treats to the staff as well, which now come individually wrapped due to COVID. So, and Julie, Tiff's Treats is a local business that delivers fresh baked warm cookies.
Oh, wow.
On like within an hour's notice, they will deliver cookies. So fabulous.
Dangerous. Very dangerous.
Yeah, very dangerous, very dangerous. So Julie, but as we think about the shortage of staff and the need, like Melissa's talking about growing our workforce, in your role at the Century Foundation, you have a focus on work and labor issues. So as you think specifically about the elder care economy, what is needed to encourage more people to work in and stay in this field?
It's a great question. And I think just, listening to Melissa and kind of the way you're describing it, it's so clear to me that what's missing is a significant public investment, right? Because we cannot solve these problems on our own. We can't solve them between the people who need the care and the people providing the care. There's not enough resources there. And the fact is, these are public goods. These are things that all of society benefits for when you invest in childcare, when you invest in long-term care, right? So that's like number one, that without public investment, we end up pitting people against each other. And that's, the opposite of what care is all about. Care is about coming together as a community and thinking about how do we support all of each other. And even thinking about, people coming to work every day. We have never built the childcare system we need in this country, and yet moms have been making it work for generations. And so, people do what they have to do. That doesn't mean we can't make it easier, right? That doesn't mean we can't make it so that the financial stress of that isn't so intense, and then the emotional stress and the impact on people's health. Right. So I think there's just so much we can do. In terms of the workforce, there's a number of different things. It is a heavily immigrant workforce. So the work that we can do to have a path to citizenship would make a big difference in especially the elder care. In addition, I think that one of the things I work on with the National Domestic Workers is a Domestic Worker Bill of Rights, which would both put in additional money. Like the model is, it would put money into the Medicaid system to help cover the costs of paying people better, of giving the care workers higher wages, of paid sick days, of, other requirements. So, again, the idea being that how can we put more money into the system so that everybody wins, right? We don't want to raise wages and cut services, right? Like it should not be that kind of a trade-off. We need to make sure that we're lifting everyone up, that we have the resources. And the truth is we do, like, as we look at billions of dollars that are being, thought of for roads and bridges today, right? We know we need them. And if we can do billions of dollars in roads and bridges, we can also put in billions of dollars for the care infrastructure that our country needs, that our people need, that is key to racial and gender equity, and is really gonna make all of our lives better.
Well, and certainly many other countries around the world have figured this part out. And I'm a proud Texan and a proud American. We're pretty smart, so I know we can figure this out if other people have. And so certainly want to help with that as well. So Melissa, following up on what Julie said about workforce, I know that healthcare is a very, very big growth area for Dallas. JP Morgan Chase came out with a study just a few years ago, and they had healthcare and IT kind of as our top two areas that really need workers along a whole continuum of educational backgrounds. It's accessible to someone with a certification out of high school, as all the way up, obviously, to a PhD. And I know from driving around town and looking at help wanted signs that there are a lot. And like you said earlier, there's a lot at seeing the senior care as well. So either through your position there at Legacy, or maybe more looking at your role with Leading Age Texas, which of course is working with senior centers all across the state. What are some things that businesses are thinking about doing to help fill this workforce gap?
Well, it probably is our most critical issue right now. And to be honest, I probably would have said the same thing before the pandemic, that labor shortage and the tightness in the labor market was probably what kept me up at night. Obviously, then throughout the pandemic, that was an issue because we lost probably 100 people by saying they had to choose and only work for us. So where we were the second job, they had to go on a temporary inactive status. And then you had people that were afraid, to come to work, or, in the real peak, we had people exposed or COVID positive, quarantining. So it was a real challenge. We had to not share, between our communities or even our lifestyles. If you worked in assisted living, you could not go work in the healthcare center. So it was a real challenge. And now that many people are vaccinated and positivity rates way down, we can test. We've got PPE that we need. Things have really opened up, but the labor market's tighter than ever. And it's not just in the clinical; it's across the board. It's our culinary aides and cooks and servers and kitchen staff and housekeepers and caregivers and all of our clinical positions. We just have openings constantly, across the organization. And we have done some things. We started to increase our hourly rate. We have a goal of getting to a minimum of 15 over the next year or two. But even that is hard to argue that that's a real powerful earning wage, right? We do offer benefits if you're full-time or part-time. Many of our staff are PRN, which didn't know what that meant until I came to senior living, but on-demand workers. We have found that some people prefer that. They want the flexibility to sign up for shifts when they want it and don't want to have to be tied down to a schedule. But unfortunately for a PRN worker, they don't typically get benefits. There's no paid medical retirement. They're subject to FMLA, but not paid. So we've been offering referral bonuses. We've been offering hiring bonuses, retention bonuses that are paid, because the amount of turnover in this industry also was mind-blowing to me. It was the opposite of schools. Schools, people go and stay forever. Especially in our essential caregiver levels, we lose the majority of people within the first year. And we also have people that will hire and they won't show up for the first day of work, right? I mean, it's just an entirely different demographic as to what motivates them and what differentiates you among all the other opportunities they have to work. So, you know, again, going back to mission and values, that's huge. Making sure that it's clear why the organization exists and what your core values are, and making sure that they feel part of that community. But then also compensation's big. So those bonuses have been helpful. We looked at our shift differentials and made sure there was enough of a difference when you worked evenings and weekends. We are, again, slowly trying to increase our hourly wage. We're looking at our healthcare benefits, trying constantly to make those more affordable. We just had a conversation yesterday about retirement, you know, wanting to do more in retirement, but the reality is very few people of our hourly workers contribute much to their retirement because they can't, right? So if they asked us, would you rather us add another $1 an hour to your base pay or give a little more in retirement, they're going to take the base pay all day long, understandably. So we're trying to find ways to do both, but really our focus right now is to get our minimum hourly wage up, and then we'll continue to work on our benefits. Just, a constant education about the importance of taking advantage of that match and trying to save a little bit in retirement, or making sure that they're utilizing the healthcare benefits in the way they can. We did add telehealth benefits during COVID. So for those people who did not have health insurance, that they would have an opportunity to get telehealth appointments safely, and we've kept that in place. We partner with colleges and universities and community colleges to have some internships and to try to educate, again, those new and upcoming young people about our industry and the opportunities there. But that's an ongoing, constant initiative, as well as just the general public. So we need more people to know that this is a really rewarding and opportunity for growth career path. And hopefully the focus on just the explosion of the baby boomers and the services needed will help us with that as well. But it's constant, working with Leading Age, as well as for us, like Jewish Family Service. They have a career center where they're trying to match people that are wanting to get into the job market with jobs. And so we, since we're both Jewish sponsored, we work with them about making sure that we're partnering and where people have a desire to work in one of our areas, that we are made aware of that.
It's funny that you bring up Jewish Family Service. They were a longtime grantee of the Texas Women's Foundation, specifically in our Older Women Economic Security Tranche. Mm-hmm. And when we first started funding the economic security of older women back in 2014, we did a listening session with different organizations that worked with elders. And we kind of thought that they would be needing money for home refurbishment or things like that. The number one request that they had was that their senior women needed job training and needed job placement. And it was because, maybe an unexpected divorce or widowhood, maybe they had grandchildren come into the home, so they had become caregivers all of a sudden, and that had not been a part of their economic plan. So yeah, we have worked with Jewish Family Services a lot. Now, and one more question for you, but then I'm going to open one up to both of y'all. I think of a patient care tech is kind of like the beginning ramp at a senior care center. What kind of education is required, like for a patient care tech, the person that does most of that hands-on care of someone on the floor?
Yeah, well, it depends. So we have, just a general caregiver, there is not a certification that's needed. So the people that do kind of what you're doing for your dad, that would help be a companion, do some grocery shopping, do light cleaning, maybe help in showering, dressing, getting to doctor's appointments. There is that we train them, but there's no certification. Mm-hmm. We do have certified nursing assistants and certified med aides, and those are paid a pay grade above what a caregiver. And so there's the ability, it's not much of an investment of time. I can't remember exactly, like 3 to 6 months, you know,
That's
to
what I
get
thought.
trained. Yeah, and that is, we utilize that both on campus and with some of our home services. And then obviously we have LVNs and RNs and therapists and some higher level clinical people as well.
Okay, I was thinking that 3 to 6 months was kind of the starting community college type activity. So Melissa and Julie, both of y'all, we've talked a little bit about advocacy and about support. And so are there any specific, maybe consumer or advocacy organizations that us here on the call today should be following in order to learn more about caregiving and care workers and to stay up to date on the policy recommendations? I know one that came out in the primer, Julie, was Caring Across Generations. And I've actually recently just started to follow them on social media. So is there anybody else that either of you would recommend we pay attention to?
You know, there's a group now called Care Can't Wait that actually Caring Across Generations has helped to stand up. And it's a group that's really leveraging this moment and the urgency of this moment, the need and the attention of this moment to get people organized across childcare, paid leave, and home and community-based services with a real eye toward supporting both family caregivers and professional caregivers. And so I think that's Care Can't Wait. There's a hashtag and you can kind of follow that. I think that's one of the best. National Domestic Workers Alliance, which I mentioned before that I work with, is another group that really, it organizes domestic workers, right? That's home health care aides, nannies, and house cleaners across the country, helping them to see themselves as part of this larger movement and helping them to advocate on behalf of better working conditions, better workplace protections. So National Domestic Workers Alliance, and a lot of people have heard of Ai-jen Poo, who's the leader there and the leader of Caring Across Generations as well, and she's really inspiring and amazing. The work I do at the Century Foundation does a lot of focus on care and the latest in the care economy, and so you can follow some of my work there. And Melissa, I'll see what else you have to add.
You know, I'm not as familiar, and I'm going to check out each one of those that you mentioned. You know, I think, as you mentioned, Dina, at the beginning, Leading Age is both a national organization and it's organized by the state. So there's Leading Age Texas, but when you join Texas, you're part of the national. And it provides professional development and programming, but also is an advocacy arm for nonprofit senior living, and that's or senior services of all types. So there's been a lot of advocacy around a lot of the things we've been talking about, also some of the regulations, the funding that's coming out of the states to support it. And so they've probably been our largest advocate, and I leaned on them a lot during the pandemic when we needed some support at the county and local levels with regards to, testing before coming into our community, obtaining PPE, all those things that were kind of a crisis and we were trying to deal with in the moment during the pandemic. It was helpful to have someone who had access to Austin and, had resources across the nation that were helpful. So that would be my primary at this point.
Well, and following people like Leading Age, like Care Can't Wait, Caring Across Generations, I think for all of us, once we clue in to those sorts of organizations, they push out information to us about the activities that are going on with big bills like the rescue plans, as well as small ones. And Lisa De La Garza, who's on the call with us today, and me, we both work a lot in advocacy here at the Women's Foundation. And I can tell everybody, it is very, very easy to be an advocate for the issues that you care about. It is a simple matter of knowing who's your senator, who's your representative that are up in Washington, who's your senator, who's your representatives that are down in Austin, for those of us that are in Texas. Understand who their staff is. You can call them, you can write them, you can email them, and it's not scary because these people are generalists, that they cover lots of different stuff. So it's a 1 to 2 minute phone call or a brief email that simply says, regarding bill number XYZ, I care about it. I want you to vote yes or no. This is why I care, because I'm a professional caregiver or because I'm a family caregiver. And I hope that you will follow through on this. That's one of the ways to elevate these issues to make sure that our elected officials know that we care, that we are here, and that we're paying attention. So please do not be intimidated thinking, well, I don't know enough and I'm not an expert in advocacy, because you are a constituent. And if we are constituents, that means we are integral to the process of our governance. And so by following these kind of people, then it'll help me understand what I need to do. And then I can take that action around the clock. Another opportunity is the Texas Women's Foundation has our Army of Advocates. And this, of course, is a monthly email that goes out with an action item every month. And it always details something that Texas Women's Foundation, some advocacy policy issue that the Women's Foundation is following. And elder care and caring is certainly a part of that. And so Kristen Centers will be pushing out an email to all of you after this session is over, but we'll make sure that you have that address to sign up to be a part of the Army of Advocates. And it's very simple, because what we do every month is we give you what the issue is, why we care, what level of person you would need to reach out to. Is it state? Is it federal? Is it city council sometimes? And it makes it super easy for you then to go ahead and take action. So thank you all both for those ideas so that we can stay engaged. So my last question, in a sentence or two. If you, we're going to start with Julie. If you had superpowers for a day, what would you put in place right away that you think could have the strongest impact on access and equity of care for elders or for families and for caregivers?
Great question. I would love to have superpowers. I would pass the American Jobs Plan and the American Families Plan. That would be number one. And that would put a lot more funding into states and localities to be able to, do all of the things, right? Make these services affordable, pay people better, give them benefits, create substitute pools, right? Like really just invest in supporting family caregivers. So I think, unfortunately, money is the best answer, and the federal government is the one who has the most of it. So I say, let's start there, and then we can all work together to make sure that money gets used well.
Thank you. Melissa?
I actually agree wholeheartedly. I think some funding that it would allow us to significantly increase pay for our essential workers across the board and make sure that we are paying them for all the important work that they're doing at a livable wage. And at the same time, provide some funding for those seniors who cannot afford to have the care that they need. And, as Julie mentioned, if you do one without the other, it just exacerbates the problem, right? So you really have to tackle it from both sides.
Thank you. Thank you both so very much. On behalf of the Texas Women's Foundation, I want to thank all of you for joining us and supporting us. We hope to see you at our virtual 36th annual luncheon that's coming up on September 30th, where we're actually going to have two remarkable best-selling authors, Angie Thomas and Cleo Wade, who are going to talk about the power of each woman's voice and storytelling around building empathy, compassion, and community in our world. In addition, when we send out the follow-up email, we'll make sure that you have the link so that you can sign up for the Army of Advocates and that you can get the entire primer, Why Care About Care, from the Asset Funders Network. But Melissa, Julie, thank you again. Lisa, thank you. Everyone, have a great weekend. And please remember, you do have the power. You need to reach out to your elected officials and we can help you do that. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.